welcome everyone. Hope everyone's got some food, and we'll talk about the Brexit event. So, a while back, let me give you a bit of introduction actually to all of this. So, Web and Internet Science and the WSI, we do lots of analytics and analysis of social media and various different types of web data. And obviously, there's lots of interest currently on looking at how social media, how things like Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and all these different services on the web can be used to predict, to understand, to monitor, hi Tom, these different events that are going on. So either elections, or it might be some kind of political debate, or more broadly things like how disease spreads or how people can track kind of outbreaks of activity. And one of the things that Wendy thought was a good idea what we could be doing in the past, and part of the kind of broader thing we'd be doing in WSI, is looking at Brexit and trying to collect the data both for historic analysis once the election and the results are in, but also to see what we can do in terms of monitoring it in real time and what type of analytics we can build on top of that. So one of the things that we have been involved in and we've been running for a while now is this project called the Web Observatory. And I'm sure Wendy can give a much better explanation than myself, but in short, the Web Observatory is a way to collect and present various different sources of data and make them discoverable for people to use for analysis, for their own research purposes, and also just to make sure people are aware the data sets are out there. And these data sets could be web data or it could be various other sources. The Web Observatory in our instance is looking at web data, predominantly looking at social media data. So what the Web Observatory is, if you think about it in the basic kind of instantiation, is a website. If you go to webobservatory.sutton.ac.uk, you get presented with a website where you can find data sets and visualizations or applications, and these are various different data sets collected by researchers within Southampton or outside of Southampton. And the visualizations are based on those data sets. So they could be visualizations of, say, live Twitter streams, or visualizations of, I don't know, Wikipedia revisions and analysis based on that. So we are not the only observatory. There are multiple different observatories. So if you go to webobservatory.org, you can see a listing of different observatories providing their data. And these are different web science labs around the world, so from South America to Asia to Australia. And all of those different observatories contain their own data sets. And within there, I'm just giving you a background on this so you know where all the stuff is leading to. And with all of these observatories, they all provide the data in a similar way. So once we have their data and we know what they've got, we can do searching across them. So this is a nice tool for you guys who are interested in looking at social media data, looking at web different sources of data, can do discovery and kind of, basically discovery of the data sets and then use them for your own research. So what have we been doing for Brexit? So one of the things that's part of the Web Observatory, which is WSI pushing, is building the kind of capabilities to perform real-time analytics on various different sources of data. So we have, this is just kind of a very detailed-ish architecture diagram of what we do, but we have the means to provide researchers access to various real-time streams of data. And those data sources could be Twitter, could be Wikipedia, could be some crowdsourcing platform. And in the Southampton Web Observatory, you see which ones are listed. And what we've been doing is building tools to take and ingest those data and provide some visual kind of analytics on top of it. So what have we been doing for Brexit? So we've had various different data stores or data sets being collected and processed into some different data stores for you guys to use. And they're all listed on the observatory if you go and find them. But we've also had, with our colleague who's in that little window at the minute there, he's going to be talking in a second, Dominic DeFranzo. We've been building some small dashboards on these streams that we've been processing to visualize the Brexit event net, which is happening at the minute. And just a bit of background on this. So there's lots of questions. I had some emails this morning coming in about, what's the data, where is this coming from, how is it representative of the actual population in the UK, etc., etc. We're going to go through all of this in a minute, and believe me, I think there's lots of limitations in using social media data, but what we're doing is presenting what you can find and what you can see. But Dominic's going to talk about this in a second a little bit more, but the data which you are seeing in a second from the real-time observations and the dashboard that's been developed is based on two different streams of data, which is itself based on some existing research done in University of Edinburgh, looking at what are the collection of hashtags or terms which are associated with those different streams related to the stay or leave. So what we currently have in terms of data is about 4.5 million tweets have been produced since, this only shows from May, but it was actually since February. And that's this graph actually on behalf of Nick sitting in the audience there. So if you want to talk to him about how he produced that, I'm sure he'll be telling you about that soon. But let me pass you over now to Dom to talk about the real-time dashboard that he's been making. Dom, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
We can hear you, Dom.
So through the dashboard is kind of a quick visualization I cooked up to kind of show in real time some of the different media and different types of information and data feeds we can get access to. So at the top you see a map of where all different tweets from the UK are talking about and discussing Brexit, currently mostly around London and other places. If we were to press some arrows around or move some things, we can zoom in on other cities and see what the conversations are taking place inside of there. And that bottom screen is all the recent polling taking place inside of about the leave and exit vote. So that's the blue, of course, being the stay inside the EU, the red being the leave. That back and forth is the different percentages of the polls since for the past about 1.5 years to up to just a few days ago, going top to bottom. And then so we have some Twitter information kind of coming up of recent tweets that are geolocated to wherever the map is currently focused. So by moving the map around, by zooming into other cities, we kind of get a feel of trying to understand the conversation or understand how these different areas in the UK are talking about or thinking about Brexit differently. And then kind of play around with this. And at the top, you see some numbers kind of scroll back and forth. That's the real-time feed of different stay votes to leave votes. And as you notice, the leave is going much more rapidly than the stay. There's a giant bias in Twitter towards leave votes and leave in general, that conversation, than to stay. There's been some great research and articles from other researchers in other areas kind of focusing on some of the internal biases. Not just in Twitter, but in other social media apps. So, this isn't super pretty looking, and we can make it a little better, but the thing is that we can build these type of visualizations very quickly, very kind of in demand, trying to show different research, different data feeds to go. A lot of this is very generalizable, and it's a way of trying to build dashboards and visualizations that bring different contexts, different data feeds, different information together, and allow you to maybe kind of see how these things are kind of correlating to one another, be able to adjust to these different topics, ideas, these data feeds together, and see so many interesting insights or ideas come through, and kind of create a collaborative process of how do we work with you and others to build on these better, to design new things, to build them up, and kind of have these skills of building better visualizations and dashboards into our macroscope. If you go to the Skype window.
Yep, sure. I'll bring that to everyone now.
So what you're seeing now here at RPI is a visualization engine that we built called the Campfire. It's a 360 table view with both a panoptic screen wrapping around the table and a floor at the bottom. And so this is the same visualization running in a different, more collaborative space. So it's about 6 feet. About 6 feet in diameter, 8 feet with the table included. And that same visualization is now running just on a different interface, a different engine. And this allows people to sit around a room together, to be able to discuss these things, to kind of pick up a keyboard and kick around places and talk about it. And I can see where someone else is looking at. I can, talk and collaborate. We can point at things together, and we can maybe discuss where this information is coming from, what this conversation we're viewing, the types of things that are happening. So it's just kind of a way of showing that these visualizations can look different, we can do different things with them. We kind of change the physicality of how we're displaying and showing that information, and the new type of power, the new type of collaborative effects that things can have. So we're hoping to be able to bring some more technologies and interfaces and physical designs like that into Southampton as well.
Brilliant, thanks Dom.
Yeah, thank you.
That campfire, by the way, he's at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute at the moment. He works for us, but he's currently at RPI in the States, and they built this campfire first, and so that's a table he's looking at, and we will have one of those here soon. But anyway, so we can retrospectively look at all this data that we're storing endlessly to see what influence any of this had on whatever the result is tonight.
I had some emails earlier, and I was just saying about what does this data actually show and what doesn't it show. And so in many cases you see, so this is just another graph by Nick, and we've seen if you split the stay or you split the leave data set, which is simply very much a word analysis. So if you take the text of a message and say, does it contain X or does it contain Y, and you can split that, yeah? And you get two different data sets, so one containing the corpus of stay and one leave. But the broader questions of, when you take this and people use this type of analysis in the news and use this in type of reporting, what kind of implications does it have in the terms of how it impacts the way we understand what's being said on these media? And I mean, these are kind of the seed questions I'd like you to think about and then bring some stuff back to us. Does it actually represent who the people are using this? So who uses Twitter? Who uses Facebook? Does that represent the general population? And how do we, by the way we present this data, so when we show you a nice graph, when we show you a nice visualization, how do we misinterpret? How do we construct that data to tell a story which might not actually be true? So all of these, and Dom can probably chip into this as well, all of these data sources are built on the availability of data from Twitter. Twitter provides you a small fraction of what's actually being shown. And although they claim this is a representative sample of the full fire hose, so for those, who does any social media data research out there? So it's a small percentage like this feed. So what happens when you...
They're not putting their hands up, there's more than that.
Maybe they're eating, I don't know. So what happens typically, so if I'm Twitter and I have a large amount of data, I obviously can make money out of this. So they're not going to give you the entire stream of data that's provided by their service. So what they do is they provide you a very small sample of this stream of data and all the people contributing to their service.
What do you mean by very small?
So typically it ranges between 1 to 10%. In Twitter, it's actually at 1%, and if not a little bit less. Well, why do they do this? Obviously because data is money for them, and secondly, it's a lot of load on their servers. If they were providing everyone with 100% of their data source...
We're searching on particular terms, right? Does that mean we only get 1%?
You still only, reduce 1% of that. If you're using, there's two mechanisms on Twitter. There's the search API, which is
using the APIs on Twitter.
So you can build, essentially, if you go to twitter.com and you do a search, you are using their API, but they're building a service, they're building their website on their API. So what we do, we take the twitter.com's backend and we build our own things on top of it, which is what you see here. So we take their data and we pump it into our own mechanisms.
So is this 1%?
This is still 1% of what they do. So the way Twitter reports, the way they produce their data is that it's a fair sample of the entire stream. But what is fair and what is the policy, they never produce a white paper on that. Dom, have you got anything to add to this about the actual sampling bias and the consequences of using social media data?
You can see, we talked a bit about the biases before. One of the reasons having the official poll information and things like Twitter, be able to kind of see the disparity between some of the actual official polls from different organizations around, trying to get a feel of what people are feeling, and seeing how different that is than the feeling and information and ideas we're getting from Twitter as well. So you see that certain campaigns, like the Leave campaign, is very, very active on Twitter. They're very active at pushing their hashtags. They're people that tend to be and that type of mindset are very active and kind of use that as giant selection bias and then push bias towards that. So it's, you can't just take it by itself. It's about trying to overlay that information with other data sources to get a more holistic understanding of where the things are. Because if you were just looking at Twitter alone, you think it'd be a slam dunk, landslide for the Leave campaign, where that might not be the case. After the fact, once we have, we still have collections of all this data, we can be more precise, use some either ideas from machine learning, and natural language processing, or other techniques to better classify and refine these feeds and these conversations.